call the meeting of the Committee of the Whole to order now. I'm wondering if there are any additions to the agenda this morning. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wax. I'd like to add the addition under 7.6, Economic Developers of Alberta Conference in early April, April 8th to 11th.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Are there any other additions? Would someone like to move that we then approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Keller-Herenthy, all those in favor? Motion carried. We'll move on then to the February 11th Committee of the Whole minutes. Is there any business arising from those minutes? No, we move then to delegations. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Then we go on to correspondence 6.1, the RCMP quarterly report. Do we have Sergeant Daisy here to speak to it? No. Director Nedon, do you have any thoughts or comments you want to add? Or CAO?
Sure. Thanks, Deputy Mayor Waxer. So this is regular correspondence from the RCMP. They provide these reports on a quarterly basis as a matter of making sure that they're public record, and for council's information, we present them to council in an open public meeting. The report gives you an opportunity to read from Sergeant Daisy's perspective about some of their priorities and their actions towards the priorities that they've set. You can see that their first priority has been traffic safety. Priority 2 is police community relations and police visibility. And you can see some of the activities that they've undertaken in both of those areas. And then you can also see their staffing complement on page 11 of your agenda package, or page 5 of his report. And you can see that they have no current hard vacancies, so positions that are completely vacant. And then you can also see their service trends report that's attached to the package. Obviously, in a number of areas, there are general declines. And I think that this is also likely reflective of sort of the changes that we've seen in the community since the wildfire last summer. But again, this is merely presented so that it is a part of the public record, and an opportunity for council to raise any issues that may come up out of the report that you might like to have administration take back to Sergeant Daisy for any further questions.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I did note in the updates regarding traffic that the RCMP has been involved with increased visibility and enforcement with the amount of traffic that we've had with debris removal. And I'm assuming they're also heavily involved with the move-in most recently of the housing, and may have helped coordinate some of the traffic control. And I think, you know, seeing as how this housing just arrived recently, that recognition should probably be given to their assistance, however that may have happened along the highway and within town, to quickly get those units in place.
Any other questions or comments? Would someone like them? Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. No questions. Just a comment following on Councillor Melnick's comments. I just wanted to draw attention to priority number 2 in the report from Sergeant Daisy, Police Community Relations. He has set out a list of opportunities that the RCMP have taken locally to engage themselves with the community to community benefit and greater harmony within the community. And I want to congratulate them for that, and also note how they played a role in the entry into the community about a week or two ago of the units procured through the federal government. Perhaps unnecessary for the RCMP specifically to lead that parade of new housing for our residents into the community, but they did that because they understand the significance of that to community well-being, and they are engaged. So I just use this opportunity to thank Sergeant Badesi and his team of RCMP for engaging with the community in the way that they do, and fostering that relationship. It's so beneficial to our small community to have that degree of unity.
Absolutely, thank you for that. If there are no further comments, would someone like to make a motion that we receive the report for information? Councillor Kelleher MP. All those in favor? Motion carried. We move then on to 7.1, the fire department staffing captain of prevention. And I'm assuming Director Nadon will have preference for that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. You will see that this is one of 2 reports that I'll be presenting today about fire department staffing. And this one, as outlined in the recommendation, is what we are looking for is the conversion of the captain of prevention position to a continuous role. So you may remember in August, I believe, we came to council and we requested the establishment of that position along with 10 term firefighter positions to support our department after the incident. And these positions are very much related to recovery, directly related to incremental work that needs to happen post-incident, and therefore are eligible for the disaster recovery program as well. So in that context, the position was posted for a 2-year term, and it was posted in the fall. We posted it 2 or 3 times, I believe. We actually also revisited the job description and managed to make it bump a little bit on the QP wage grid. We thought wages was part of the issue why we couldn't recruit, which is a partial reason for it, but mainly the fact that it's a term and not a continuous position, it makes it very difficult to attract the right person who will be willing to quit whatever other employment they have to come and take a temporary term position. So the request before council today is to make that role a continuous position. And what that entails is that we would continue to work with DRP and try to get this position funded by DRP as long as we can. But for council to accept that ultimately it would end up being an expense that would be covered in the operating budget. So our current estimate is that would likely happen in January 2027. So the 2027 operating budget is our current target, but again, that is subject to our discussions with DRP. But then that would allow us to post a position as a full-time continuous role, which would allow us to recruit the right candidate. And Chief Conti and I have a good level of confidence that that would make the difference and that we would be able to hire for that position. In the meantime, as I outlined in the discussion, not having that position filled is causing some pretty significant challenges. One, because the increase in building inspections that will come once we start building, so that is part of the business case for it being directly related to recovery, as well as providing leadership and supervision for our term firefighters, which are also here as a direct outcome of the wildfire. And so having those crews at the station, we require more supervisory positions. So the captain position is a unionized position, but it very much falls in the sort of lead hand category. It has supervisory duties. And importantly, again, related to the fire, is that our team of officers, so that's our fire chief, deputy chief, captains, lieutenants, we are a bit short in those positions in terms of some of our staff and some of our volunteers are still recovering, are looking after themselves, or not necessarily fit for duty for those shifts. So it puts a pretty big amount of pressure on whoever is able to do those shifts. And then that captain position would definitely become part of the rotation and be able to take duty officer shifts 4 days at a time. So that is probably the biggest pressure I'm seeing, and it's important for our department to fill that position as soon as we can. And making it a continuous role, we think is gonna help us attract the right candidate. And last but not least, succession planning is something we need to think about for the department. So between the fire chief, deputy chief, and 2 full-time captains, then we're starting to have a bit of depth in terms of cycling those positions potentially into more senior leadership roles. And lieutenants would remain volunteer positions at this time, but we're really looking at how to promote from within, encourage leadership development, and making sure that we have some people interested and qualified to step into these roles when we need them. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, to you, to Director Dunn. Will we have housing for this position, or are you hoping to hire locally?
Thank you for the question through Deputy Mayor Waxer to Councillor Kelleher MP. Both are possible, I think. It could be external, it could be internal. Certainly making it continuous would make it more attractive for a local candidate who might be otherwise employed. But housing remains this challenge that we have for all municipal positions. I mean, they would be an essential position, so they would be eligible for temporary housing in whatever fashion that the GRCC has available at the time. So both are possible.
Right.
Here.
I saw your hand up.
Oh, he did. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, through you to Director to Dawn. We heard last week from the Chamber of Commerce that 2 of their concerns related to budgetary matters. One of those is staff positions. And while I appreciate the organizational requirement for this position, I am concerned about the connection with the DRP and whether we could get more certainty from the province that at least for the next 2 years, a captain of prevention would be covered by DRP. Because if they surprise us and say that it is not covered, then that's another budgetary expense immediately when our taxpayers can least bear that burden. I appreciate that it would become a municipal expense about 3 years out, which is a different issue. But for the short term, I would be comforted if we could get some advance indication from the province that if we turn the position into a permanent position, it will still qualify for the next 2 years at least as eligible under DRP.
EAO given.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. So this position, Your Worship, is similar in nature to the continuous positions that have been approved previously by DRP in the urban design and standards area, the planner positions. There were 2 of those positions that were established as full-time continuous. We put forward the rationale that those positions were needed much earlier than they would have been under normal circumstances, and administration believes that this is a very similar case. The need for this service is going to be significantly advanced as a result of the wildfire event. They're going to be the position will be an important part of the consultation around rebuilding, and the volume of reconstruction efforts that'll be going on is materially different than it would have been outside of the wildfire event. Additionally, the work with the rest of the team being able to support the duty shifts is another important part that wouldn't have been necessary had it not been for the impact of the wildfire event on our staffing levels in the volunteer fire brigade. So administration believes that this is a consistent argument with what we've seen in the urban design and standards area, where DRP has previously approved 2 years of funding sort of because the positions were advanced earlier than they would have been otherwise. And this position has connection to the fire service. And the impact of the wildfire event on the fire service, both lend itself really well to making that, similar approach to DRP. So administration doesn't foresee any challenges in making that argument at this time.
Thank you, CAO Given, for that. And I readily accept myself the rationale and the argument you put forward, but we are not the decision makers. I am comforted by your optimism that the province will agree because they've made similar concessions in the past. I just worry that if they don't agree and we commit ourselves to the position, it's a budgetary increase that we haven't actually budgeted for. So I'm content with, absolutely content with the rationale why it should be funded through DRP, but I'm still a bit hesitant until we hear something from the province to confirm that they accept that rationale.
CAO Given.
Deputy Mayor Waxer for Mayor Ireland, perhaps then an addition to the recommended motion, where council could add a subject to confirmation of eligibility for the first 2 years under DRP. So basically the recommended motion with a comment at the end that adds subject to confirmation of DRP eligibility.
I would be comforted by that, certainly, although, I mean, I don't know if there's any prospect that we could have that confirmed before next week. So this is just a recommendation from committee to council in any event. I suppose it's inconsequential if we add it now or add it later, but is there any prospect we could have a response by next week?
Mayor Waxer for Mayor Ireland, I think the answer is maybe. So we meet regularly. I know Director Farg is regularly in conversation with officials at DRP and with the province. So, given the number of conversations that we have, maybe, not knowing or being willing to commit to what their internal processes are for sort of response. That's why I think that the addition of the subject to would allow the item to move forward to council, and even at council could approve it with that subject to, because it gives administration clear guidance that the position should not be filled unless that DRP eligibility is confirmed, however long that might take.
Questions? I have a question. As I read through the request for decision, I almost had the impression that it was already approved by DRP, just not the continuous status. Would the continuous status impact the DRP approval?
Deputy Mayor Waxer, so you're absolutely correct. The position has previously been accepted by DRP. So we know that this function is supported under their program. The challenge is being that they have a general and maybe explicit sort of prohibition on establishing continuous positions, except that we've seen them approve that in another instance in their urban design and standards for 2 different positions, because there was a solid argument to be made. So you're absolutely correct. This has previously been supported by DRP. Administration, thinks it's reasonable to add that little layer of caution, as referenced by Mayor Ireland, because DRP generally says that their funding isn't to fund full-time continuous positions. I think the intention is that DRP is not intended to substitute municipal funding for positions the municipality would have otherwise had. And as I mentioned before, the municipality wouldn't have this position this early had it not been for wildfire. And again, we've seen them accept that argument previously.
Thank you very much for that detailed explanation. Are there other questions? Is there a councillor then willing to make the motion? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I would recommend that committee recommend to council to approve the conversion of the captain of prevention position to a continuous role subject to DRP eligibility for 2 years.
Deputy Mayor Waxer, maybe the motion could be subject to confirmation of DRP eligibility. In terms of the term, I think that that's something we'd want to have some latitude to be able to discuss with DRP.
We can take for 2 years out of that recommendation.
Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Motion carried. I believe we stay with you, Director Nadon, and move to the next item, which is fire department staffing term firefighters.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. As outlined in the report here, our request is that committee recommend council approve the extension of 8 term firefighter positions to continue through the fall of 2025. So similarly to the previous request, this came before council in August, and at the time we had a request for 10 firefighters to be on a 6-month term to be extended as needed. So we are now at the part of to be extended as needed. And so we did hire 8 firefighters. We had a bit of a flux, but 8 is our full-time staffing currently. And that means it's 4 on, 4 off shifts. So there's 4 of them on at a time, at any given time, and then they work on that rotation. And initially we were thinking that for the 10 that we wanted some of our local volunteer firefighters to step into those roles or have the ability to fill if anyone's sick or taking some leave or anything like that. But we found that for those short periods, if someone is skipping a shift, for example, taking it off or being ill or anything like that, going down to 3 firefighters per shift is still a workable solution. 4 is better, but we didn't feel the need to fill those other 2. So that's why we came back with 8, not 10. So the request is somewhat decreased in that sense. And so that would be to take us through to the fall. So another 6 months or through the fall of 2025 is how we have it worded here. And essentially, our call volumes are about to increase as we head into the summer season, as well as obviously hazard season. So the likelihood of wildfire increasing. And but mostly the rationale behind keeping it there is that our crews are still recovering. So our volunteer firefighters coming to calls, there's quite a bit of variability within that group. So some of them are quite keen and ready to go and want to come to calls and come to the station and respond as they used to. But then that's sort of counterbalanced on the other end by there's also a group who is not currently responding to calls and is actively working on themselves and taking some rest and getting the professional supports needed to recover from the incident. And then there's another segment that's probably somewhere in the middle where either through their employment or their personal situations or a variety of items directly related to the wildfire that their attendance at calls is inconsistent. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. So all that to say that with our group of volunteer firefighters as a whole, ensuring that we have the proper amount of responders to get trucks out the door for different types of calls is still a challenge, is still not something that we can promise or guarantee, and we're very much in the business of promising and guaranteeing that fire trucks will get out the door when they're needed. So that's why we're requesting for the extension of 8 term firefighter positions. And like I said, it was approved for 6 months, which would take us to the end of April, technically is when that term would end. So we are seeking council endorsement for another 6 or to the fall of 2025 as listed in the recommendation. And that is the decision we require in order to go to the DRP and confirm that whether or not they will extend that funding. We're pretty confident that the case is there, but that is a step that we have to make and go to them and ask. And this is, to CEO Given's point, more of a typical request, as in those are not full-time permanent position, continuous positions. They are here as a term and they're presented as such. And we do anticipate moving away from that model, come fall perhaps. I mean, we'll reassess at that point, but this is where we are. Thank you.
Questions for Director Nadon? Councillor Kelleher.
The current position, Ms. Director Don, are they local or do we have staff coming in from other towns?
Councillor Waxer through to Deputy Mayor Waxer, through to Councillor Kelleher MP. We currently have one local firefighter, and I'll take this opportunity to thank him for his service, and he's doing some great work for us. It's our new lieutenant, Nick Kellis. So he's been with the department for a number of years. He was previously employed in operations, but he took the term position with us, and he's interested in staying, and yeah, he's one of our lieutenants, so playing a good leadership role with that team there. And the others are coming from out of town. Some are from the region, sort of Edson, Yellowhead County area, but others are from across the province, Vegreville and Vulcan and other places.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. My question is, right now, when it's kind of, for off season, what do they do on a daily basis? And I'm assuming that the ones coming from out of town, do they stay at the station? Is there spaces for them to stay there?
Deputy Mayor Waxer through to Councillor Hall. Yes, they're staying at the station. So the dorms are being utilized as dorms, and that's where they're staying. And so that also limits how many we can have at a time because we need to accommodate them here. And so, like I said, the nature of the service is calls based, so they go to calls is their main duty. But also they perform a lot of duties around the station. Like we had a new truck, for example, which needed to be equipped and all the equipment, put on, taken off. And also our station needed quite a bit of TLC, quite a bit of work after the fire. So our equipment went everywhere and we had to clean everything and reorganize everything. So we're actually keeping them busy that way, but also training is a big part of what they do. So they have a schedule that they develop in collaboration with their officers, and then they put themselves through different drills and review information and do all that kind of stuff, which is pretty standard. That's what firefighters do in other stations, but also the ability, that readiness to hit the ground running and go when the call comes just requires them to sort of, for lack of better words, like make themselves at home at the station, and they need to rest also. So the way our training room and our dorms are being utilized has changed quite a bit in a good way since we've had them there.
Thank you for that. And I can certainly, like driving past the station on a daily basis, it seems like there's a flurry of activity always happening there. Thank you.
There are questions. I have one question. In similar disasters such as Fort McMurray or Slave Lake, did we see the extension from 6 months to the year happen for these kinds of positions there?
But Deputy Mayor Waxer, I'm not sure that I'd be able to speak to Slave Lake, but I'm pretty certain, more certain, that Wood Buffalo was served by full-time paid firefighters. So the situation would have been quite a bit different. And so Jasper's circumstance with the volunteer fire brigade, where the municipality actually pays an outside organization a fixed sum of money each year, rather than paying individual employees, is quite a bit different from Wood Buffalo. I'm not certain about what kind of fire service Slave Lake had at the time. And so I'm not sure if administration can comment any further than that. This may be more unique to Jasper's circumstance, where our fire service was supported by that unique arrangement with the brigade.
Thank you for that. And I just would make the observation that the trauma response usually doesn't always happen immediately after, and it often takes some time before the response happens. So I feel very very much in support of this recommendation. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, and I too am in favor of this recommendation. In light of the fact we are moving into a busy summer period, we've got to be as prepared as possible, and this seems to be a working solution. And certainly, I'm happy that we've had the support from the 8 firefighters who are coming from elsewhere around the province to assist us. So I would speak and would be in favor of this recommendation.
I no longer see Mayor Ireland, but is there any other comment? Councillor Hall.
I'm just wondering if we would need to add the same thing we added for the previous motion with the subject to the funding of DRP.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Hall. I don't think that that's necessary in this case. These positions are explicitly term positions, and so there's not that difference of asking for a continuous position to be established earlier. This is a extension of the term. We have a number of other term positions related to recovery that extend well beyond this. So I don't foresee that being a problem.
Other comments or questions? Seeing none, is there a councillor willing to make this motion? Councillor Hall.
I would make the motion that committee recommend council approve the extension of 8 term firefighters positions to continue through to the fall of 2025. The other piece too, why I'm in support of this is we're going to have, anywhere between 300 and 500 contractors in town working, which also creates a bit more risk with calls. So I'm happy to support this recommendation.
I'll call the question then. All in favor? Motion carried unanimously. We move on then to 7.3, interim space for non-public facing businesses.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I'm going to be joined by Logan Ireland from the JRCC. Administration is here with a recommendation that council discontinue the storage lots service to support recovery and rebuild related projects. Logan can maybe highlight some of the background, but at a high level, council knows that the municipality currently has leases on 3 parcels of land that the highest and best use that municipalities been able to find in the past was essentially for RV storage or recreational vehicle storage of other types. There are currently 77 rented spaces. So there are 77 individuals in the community that are benefiting from this use of municipal land. Given the context of the wildfire and the multi-year efforts around rebuild, reconstruction, administration believes that there is a better use for this land than simple storage. Logan can maybe speak to some of the details of what the proposal is around how the land would be used. And then I can speak to any of the items around the process that administration is recommending. Maybe I'll hand it over to Logan to speak to what the proposal is for how the lands would be used.
Thanks, Bill. Good morning, council, administration, and residents. We've identified a need to support businesses in the industrial sector who lost their place of business during the wildfire. And we think that reallocating that very valuable and precious space in the industrial yard for those people to have a lay down and a workshop area would better suit the town to help get us through recovery. We have applied for support to make that as valuable as possible and as seamless for those individuals, and are awaiting to hear if that grant will come through. And concurrently, we're working on alternate solutions for our residents who are currently in the RV lots, should this come to pass, to ease their transition and provide them with an option of where they could relocate for minimal disruption.
Theo Given.
very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. So as Logan said, there is an immediate need, and administration has actually put forward a substantial grant to Prairies Can. We expect to hear back on that within the next week or so. The grant is actually to establish essentially an industrial container park on one of the storage lots that would allow businesses that have been displaced to have a physical location in S Block. It would also provide the potential for other businesses that may be locating to Jasper during reconstruction to have some physical space. We see this as a really useful model to support reducing costs, but also to enable local businesses to recover more quickly. Under the current bylaw, it does specify a 90-day notification period for users to move their property from the premises. I think that was under the intention of, if it was a temporary removal, sort of movement required. Administration is actually recommending that council approve the discontinuance of that service and rescinding the actual bylaw. We imagine that this will be a multi-year process, and at the conclusion of that process, the municipality will have the opportunity to reconsider what the highest and best use of the land would be at that time. Council, they might choose to resume that service, or there may be new options that are available to the municipality as discussions with Parks Canada and other federal officials around how we best use our limited land base sort of continue over the next couple of years. But in any case, administration believes that the broader benefits to the whole community of allowing businesses to locate on these lands outweighs the private benefit to the 77 folks who are currently utilizing the service. It is obviously an inconvenience for those individuals, and administration will work to ease that transition to the extent possible. I know that Logan has been reaching out to alternate locations to see if we might be able to come to some arrangements, and administration would be committed to facilitating that, again, to the extent possible, recognizing that there are commercial alternatives available, and we can be a facilitator, but it is up to individuals to make their own sort of commercial arrangements. So again, the recommendation from administration is the committee recommend council approve the discontinuing of the storage lot service, and that committee direct administration to bring forward a bylaw to rescind the storage lots bylaw. We're happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, and to administration, perhaps specifically to Mr. Ireland. We were not able to use the woodland area for residential, it's a park site, and unless I have this wrong, my understanding is that will also be used as part of a laydown area for contractors coming into town to rebuild the community. So while that might appear to be a potential site, it actually is going to be part of the rebuild process. And these RVs couldn't be stored on that site. Am I understanding that correct?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Melnick. That site is indeed intended to help with laydown and material storage. Parks Canada is working to understand what is possible in that land. Livability is not due to previous contaminants, and it has been imagined as a larger centralized laydown area where contractors that are rebuilding could store packages, framing packages, things like that, at a closer proximity than Hinton or wood storage or something like that. So the specific purpose has not been fully identified, but it does seem feasible to store things there as long as no one is living in it. And there was I thought Mike there was an update today from Christopher Ward. You want to speak to, Mike?
So just to supplement Mr. Ireland's comment there, enclosed structures would not be appropriate on that parcel due to environmental requirements due to the pre-existing landfill site. So RV units would not be appropriate for storage there. It is slated to be a staging and laydown area for the reconstruction.
Thank you for that. I anticipate that our residents would be asking that question. Why couldn't we use that land and, park our RVs there? But I appreciate having that clarity early in the process as we talk to our residents about what we need to do.
Councillor Kelleher and B.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, to you to, CEO given. So we have a number of, residents that will have motorhomes. Will they be allowed, we recommend in Valemont or Hinton here where there's storage units, but during the summer, people, it's easy to go over, take it out, go for the weekend. Will they be allowed to have it in front of their home, when they're not in use?
Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Keller MP. Administration isn't proposing any changes at this time to how we manage RVs on public roadways. As council knows, that's an item that's sort of in a fairly big state of flux, given the variance that, sort of council's previously approved to allow residents to stay in their RVs. We think that that situation is going to continue to change as Parks Canada opens up a number of spaces for residents to be able to live in their RVs at the campgrounds for the summer period. I think what I would say is that we wouldn't imagine on-street storage of RVs to be an acceptable use in Jasper. And we've been making a lot of adjustments on that over the last little while. So I'm not certain that I'd want to close the door on that, but I would say that no, administration wouldn't expect that residents would be able to now begin to store their recreational vehicles, boats, because there are a number of boats that are stored there, RVs or motorhomes on the street while they're not intending to use them. We're not proposing that as a part of this change.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I'm curious, Mr. Ireland, about how many hectares of land does this, what municipality rents out represent?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Hall. I would estimate it's probably around, I don't have an exact number, but perhaps 1.5 to 2 hectares. It's three storage lots in the industrial yard, which consists of actual multiple lots. We imagine that we would attempt to facilitate space for up to 20 C-cans of laydown area.
Thank you for that, because now we speak in hectares, so I know what that actually means. Is there a plan for the parking lot? Forgive me if this has already been asked and answered in the last few meetings, but where Elliston is right now, I know they'll be moving out come spring. Is there a plan that will just go back to what it was?
The intent is for it to resume regular operation. That's correct.
Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, through you to whoever might be able to respond. I am supportive of the recommendations. I wonder though whether we need any further recommendation. Firstly, we have leases for those lots in Block S, and without having reviewed the leases, I suspect that the permitted use is for storage, and the use will be changed by this initiative. Have we sought and received consent from Parks Canada that this change of use will be permitted, firstly? Secondly, with respect to the second recommendation to rescind the storage lot bylaw, it is that bylaw that provides the notice provision for existing users of the space. There's another recommendation, at least in the report, but not listed as a recommendation, which is to reduce the 90-day period to a 30-day period with respect to lot 10, I think it is. I think it might be challenging to do that if we rescind the bylaw. I don't know how we change the notice provision. We have some obligations. Presumably, we have contractual obligations with those 77 tenants of that space. And again, while I support in general terms this approach. I think it makes sense to convert to a more holistic community use of those lots. We are still subject to some agreements and have to respect the fact that others have rights. So I just wonder whether administration at any level has considered what would be the case with respect to notice if next week we make a recommendation this week to council and council next week agrees to rescind a bylaw. How do we then deal with the notice provision? Has anybody thought that through?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, through to Mayor Ireland. To the first part of your question about zoning on those parcels and the relationship with Parks Canada and whether they would be supportive. My understanding is that the zoning in S block is for storage and services is the intent there, is the name of that zoning category. So I do believe the proposal as has been pitched by the JRCC does fit that criteria. And also, I don't want to speak out of turn, but also I do know that I helped work on this file over the course of last week, and Parks Canada is very much involved in the JRCC, of course. And so formally, their position, I won't try to put words in their mouth, but it sure sounds like they're on board, they recognize the need and to support recovery and rebuild related projects as is presented in the recommendation is the intent there. So I think there's a sense that Parks Canada is supportive and recognizes the need. And in terms of rescinding the bylaw and the notice provisions, so every user that is currently in a storage lot has a lease agreement. And the wording in the lease agreement says that all provisions are as per the bylaw. So there's very little in the actual agreement for each user. It broadly refers to the bylaw. And the clause that is in there around procedure for potential lot closures, so that's section 8 of the bylaw, that says in the event council ceases operating municipal storage lots. So I think that is pretty much exactly the situation that we're contemplating. Owners of property stored in the lots shall be notified on or about April 1st. So that's an interesting one, of the year in which operations will cease, that their property must be removed from the lot within 90 days of notification. So there are 3 lots. The one that is specifically contemplated, we're waiting for news from Prairie Scan about funding, and the main project that the JRCC has been working on affects that one that is located at civic address number 10, Stanwright Drive. So we're suggesting that a 30-day notice would be suitable there, given the pressing nature of the project and the grant funding, which things are unfolding. I think we hope by next week, by the time this comes to council for decision, we might have a stronger indication of whether that grant was approved or not. So we're recommending a 30-day notification for that lot specifically, but maintaining the 90-day notification for the other 2 lots. The lots are not quite equal. One of the bigger ones is not the one that would be needed in that short period. So I want to say 70% of users at least would get a 90 days notice. So it would be that small portion of users that are in that one adjacent to the paved parking lot in S block is probably the best reference, would be the ones affected by that 30-day notice. So the reason we're recommending the bylaw to be rescinded is that then that 90-day clause disappears essentially, even though we plan on upholding it. I can see your reaction there. And if it is 90 days, I mean, it's not a residential tenancy, that I do know. So in the absence of the bylaw, what other legislation would apply on a non-residential tenancy? I don't know, maybe you have ideas, but that was the best I could come up with.
Well, thank you, Director Nadon, for that. My concern again is that maybe it would be better, although I concede that I haven't thought this through entirely either, but might be better to amend the bylaw first to change that 90-day provision to a 30-day provision with respect to lot 10. because even if we rescind it, if there is a lease agreement with tenants that refers to the bylaw, whether it's rescinded or not, it seems to me they could very well take the position that they are entitled to 90 days notice. And if we don't even have a bylaw, I don't know how we enforce anything. So I leave it as an open question, but it concerns me that we are affecting legal rights of individuals that we've contracted with in good faith. And it's just a challenging position to be in, even though the end result is undoubtedly for community benefit. And with respect to the question of storage and service, I get that. My greater concern at the bottom of that is really whether what I understand to be container units that could be put there for operations by commercial users, whether there is any possibility that Parks Canada will say that that is a transgression of the commercial cap. Because it sounds to me like it's a hard roof option rather than a storage option. And I just don't want to run into that problem when we're working so hard to allow the community to recover.
Yeah, okay.
Well, a couple of things, starting with that last item first, and then moving back to how administration would work with the folks that are using the space currently. By virtue of our joint operations with JRCC, Parks Canada has been intimately involved in the development of this concept, and so they're A, aware, and B, supportive, and moreover, I think we have actually received a letter of forbearance from Parks Canada confirming that they don't foresee this being sort of contradictory to the commercial cap and S-block. So that is not a concern of administration at all. Again, through the JRCC, Parks and the municipality are proceeding on all recovery related items together. That means we have these conversations well in advance of showing up at the council table. And Parks has gone so far as issuing sort of formal agreement through that letter of forbearance. So we don't foresee any hiccups that way. With respect to how administration would intend to deal with the folks that are there, I'm not certain that amending the bylaw to change the notice provision to ultimately discontinue the service would provide as much value as administration dealing reasonably with the folks that are in there. We believe we have other options that could provide accommodation for them for at least 90 days in other locations. So if there were people that felt that they couldn't move their units outside of Jasper for at least 90 days, administration would be willing to work with them. And we've already identified alternative locations where we could do that if necessary. Again, we would also want to work with the folks using that space and to help them identify other commercially available alternatives that might be more suited for them for a longer term. And we already talked about how the municipality might be able to ease that transition. Certainly at this stage, I'm not certain that that's sort of a finalized conversation, but administration appreciates that this will be an inconvenience for those 77 people who get the benefit of all of that land in our industrial area. And we want to reduce that inconvenience to the extent possible. Number one, by offering alternative locations. If somebody felt that they wanted to stick to the 90 days, if they felt that they were owed that, then administration would find a way to accommodate them. And we would also work to ease their transition. And we've started some of those conversations with other operations to see how we could maybe get some space committed for Jasperites ahead of time. So, we're going to deal with people reasonably, no matter what the bylaw says, or whether the bylaw exists or not. So I don't know that the amending the bylaw just in order to reduce the timeframe is necessary. Because if somebody said, well, the bylaw used to say that I had 90 days, I expect my 90 days, administration will work to accommodate them in an alternate location in Jasper until such time as it was time to move on.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I have two questions around two other spots, parcels of land. The S-block parking lot, what is there a plan for that? And then also that little piece of land on Sleepy Hollow Road, just as you you know, past where the home hardware used to be, there's that space that I feel like Parks maybe had contractors in there with trailers. I'm wondering if there's plans for those two spaces or what the plans are for those two spaces.
Thanks for the question. The latter of the spots you mentioned, the Sleepy Hollow RV, not RV lot, Sleepy Hollow contractor camp, it's Parks Canada land. So I won't speak for them. We have requested use of that land previously for similar purposes. And they're working hard to make sure that that land is used as effectively as possible for rebuild. Again, I can't speak to their specific intentions, but it hasn't been made available for this purpose. And then as for other identified parking lots in town, there, Christine can speak to that, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. The S Block parking lot is planned to be used for its current use, which is longer term paid parking, so over 3 days. But also the main challenge with that lot is that the stalls are small and would not accommodate the RVs that are currently located in the storage lots. So the longest stall length or the longest item length that we can accommodate there is 21 feet.
And if I can follow up with one more question, is this, and I can appreciate if the answer is not right away, is it common practice that a municipality or city will rent out public space to store RVs or privately owned vehicles? I'm just curious if that's a thing that happens outside of Jasper.
Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Hall. So I'll say that I've never seen it before. That's not the same as it doesn't happen. And to be really clear, it's possible that there is some municipality across the province that does that. I would say that it's more likely that this type of function is handled by commercial operation. You know, they're across the rest of Alberta, there are probably more than enough folks who have a quarter section of land that they're not using, that they don't mind having somebody, you know, store their RVs on in rural Alberta. As you get closer to the larger cities, you know, they become much more professionalized. But I would be willing to say that, you know, Jasper would be one of, if there are any others, one of only a small handful of municipalities that would offer this as a service, because there are so many other commercial alternatives available elsewhere in the province.
Thank you for that. And, you know, I acknowledge that we have limited land in Jasper, and this has been a really great service for RV owners. However, I fully support this, knowing that these parcels of land will be utilized for recovery in a much better way.
Yeah, I appreciate this, Deputy Mayor Waxer, being one of the users there for a recreational vehicle being a boat and all that. You know, I saw this coming, and I think it's the right use to maximize it. It's a nice to have in our community. You know, aside from, you know, the people that lost their dwellings, that might need a recreational like RV camper and stuff. They might be using it a little bit more. I can't speak to everybody. However, for the ones that have to relocate their equipment or recreational vehicles, I think, you know, we've all done pretty good at coming together, and I think there'd be a pretty broad understanding for the few that might have issues. I'm glad to hear that at least you know, the municipality is willing to help everybody out. Like collectively, it's the right thing to do for the community. I think we need that space for the greater good, and I hope that's understandable to most. Thank you.
Mayor Ireland.
Sorry, I had nothing further. If my hand was up, it was inadvertent, but thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer.
Are there any other questions? And if not, is there a councillor willing to make the motion? Councillor Demore.
I'll move that committee recommend council discontinue the storage lot service to support recovery and rebuild related projects. And that committee direct administration to bring a bylaw to rescind the storage lots bylaw number 254 to the next regular meeting.
Any debate or discussion? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimous. I've had a request if we could take a 10-minute break, so we'll reconvene at 10:42. Thank you. I call the meeting to order again. We now move to 7.4, council remuneration. And I'm assuming, Councillor, or Director Nadum will speak to this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. This item has been on the motion action list for a little bit. And the intent is as usual is that the outgoing council will set the remuneration for the following council. So this would be effective after the municipal election coming up this fall. And the last time we came to council with this, we had a conversation and administration was due to return to council to integrate the edits from the previous discussion. So that's what happened here. So that's from the October 22nd meeting is when administration received direction, and essentially there seemed to be consensus around the remuneration itself, but maintaining per diems was the direction that we had from council. So initially we had proposed an all-encompassing remuneration package, but then we received direction from council to keep the per diem approach as well. So ultimately, for council to approve this, it would be in the form of a policy. So that's why we're coming today asking that committee recommend council approve the policy would be the outcome ultimately that we're looking for. If you would like to see any further edits, we're happy to do that as well. And the highlights of the work that was done or the changes that are proposed are that we've integrated all of the relevant provisions of the policy into a single document. So this was one of those older policies where most of the material was actually in the administrative procedures. So that has now been shifted to be all in the policy. So council decides and has full control over that. And we've maintained the per diem, so we've adjusted that slightly. And some of the highlights of things that are new include a $100 monthly technology allowance for the mayor, and that's essentially to cover cell phone expenses, which was a benefit that the municipality already provided. It just wasn't documented as such in the policy. As well as there's a supplementary pay for councillors serving as deputy mayor. So that would allow councillors to receive an additional $500 per month in recognition of the additional work that happens there when someone is acting as deputy mayor. And CO given, am I missing one other highlights? I think that's it. So all the relevant documentation is there. There is a draft policy attached, and we're happy to hear from council. And like I said, you could recommend this forward excuse me, to regular meeting next week for approval, or you could send us away with some edits before it comes back for approval next week again, or just if it needs more work, give us more edits and we'll go back to a committee meeting, or sort of your three options here. Thank you.
I'll open the floor then for questions or comments. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, and reading through the request for decision. I noted that in that request for decision, there isn't any reference to something that's in the policy. And in the policy under meeting honoraria, it does indicate under point 2.2, and the second sentence, 2/3 of the payment shall be an honorarium and 1/3 shall be non-accountable expense allowance. Can, for the benefit of council and for the benefit of public, can you explain what that particular 1/3, 2/3 breakdown means?
Deputy Mayor Waxler for Councillor Melnick, good catch, Councillor Melnick. I think I would actually recommend that committee amend the policy to delete that sentence. I think that's a leftover from a change that was made federally a number of years ago to the taxation status of elected official pay. There was a period where you used to be able to get where 1/3 of elected official pay was sort of under this idea that it was a non-accountable expense allowance. We have a separate policy and procedure for how council members submit expenses. That's well defined, that the federal government removed the ability for municipalities to sort of leave that 1/3. And I have to apologize. I think that's just a leftover as we're sort of bringing together the policy and the admin procedure from before.
Thank you for that clarification. I kind of thought that's what that might have been. So as we move forward, I guess we would include that in any decisions that we would make here. And perhaps there's some, I see we have reference to policy B007, which relates to staff and council expenses, which speaks to remuneration for meals, for example. And while it won't be in this particular document, but I think that we need to go back to that policy and review if those per diems are still adequate in today's new environment. Because the $17, when you back off gratuity and tax and so on, means you're left with $14 for a meal, whether it be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And that in today's reality, I don't know for our municipal staff who are traveling under that same policy is adequate anymore. So it would be something that would probably go to perhaps the procedural committee, legislative committee for review and recommendation. But I think we should also take a look at that before the end of this term.
Councillor Keller-Hervey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Just going over it, I don't know if I agree with the $500 per month for deputy mayor duties. I find when I do deputy mayor, if I'm representing the mayor somewhere, we can put in for our extra for our meeting or the 2-hour meeting that day per day. I don't necessarily, when I'm doing deputy mayor, and I've done lots of different things, if I feel I need to be extra compensated, I just put in for that as part of my per diems.
Councillor Demoda.
Fair point. And just, not to really engage in debate, but just more for clarity, with the change though, and how, municipal councillors get paid in the, post-election going forward for the next term. Are we not going away from per diems?
Last October, council debated and we suggested the be a base salary with per diems.
Okay, so yeah, I just that to me, I think that sometimes you do have a lot of extra responsibilities, especially when the mayor's not here, and then all that extra time that you spend going to sign checks and things. I don't know if that's gonna continue on in the next term or following terms. Yes, I guess if you're called to an engagement where you have to speak, you do get compensated for that. I'm neither here nor there on that one, but I think it's a fair thing to contemplate and debate for sure.
Mayor Ireland, there is a hand above your name, and I wasn't certain, it's been there for a while, so I wasn't certain if you had your hand up or not.
Oh, guys, with cursor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. There is no hand showing on my end, but thank you for calling on me. With respect to this ongoing discussion about the role of the deputy mayor, of course, I cannot speak to that knowingly, but the other alternative, I mean, if there ought to be compensation just for fulfilling that role, it could be addressed in the monthly base salary, since every councillor through the term serves the same number of months as deputy mayor anyway. So whether it's specific to those months while they serve or just reflected in the base salary, at the end of the day, it would wind up the same. And I agree with Councillor Kelleher MP that in the event that the deputy mayor is required, as has been the case this month in particular for Deputy Mayor Waxer, to attend at events on behalf of the mayor, there is a per diem that is now brought back in. So I understand and agree with Councillor Kelleher MP on that score. But just generally, it need not be reflected as an additional honorarium for the months that any individual councillor serves as deputy mayor, because it's all going to work out the same, and it could just be reflected in the monthly salary.
Thank you for that, Councillor Demoda.
Yeah, the mayor makes a very good point, but the other thing too, depending on the next council and how that's made up, I think this is just kind of an agreement that we had that we were gonna do this process, and same with, you know, deputy mayor chairing committee meetings, and, you know, the next organizational meeting might change that, or future organizational meetings. So I still think that the rotation, either way, the mayor's right, whether it's 2 months or 4 months or how it's gonna work out down the road, it doesn't make sense to reflect it that way within the base. Pay.
Any other comments? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I'm happy this is here. This role has become much bigger, and I think it's going to be, will continue to be as big in the next 4 years, the next term. Something I've been thinking about since our conversation back in October, when I spoke to, you know, the fact that when you look around the table, everybody that is here either has a very flexible job or is retired. I'd love to see a broader, you know, section of residents being able to run. And with this, you might actually be able to support yourself and support your family with this wage. Something I said back in October was, you know, I do this not for the money, but I do this because I have a heart of service, but I'm also I have a very flexible second job that pays my bills. Deputy Mayor Waxer made the point that there might be other people out there with a heart of service that can't do this because they don't have that flexibility. So I'm happy this is here, and for the public, we're not the only council right now doing this. Canton's also looking at their remuneration, and this isn't for us, this is for the next term. For anybody out there considering running, this is a job that now will pay enough to be a job.
I would just make quickly the comment that I was very happy to see under the principles, the second one, that remuneration must not be a barrier to a diverse and representative pool of candidates from Jasper residents. Because again, that is always my concern, that it may not be a possibility for many individuals. So I'm very pleased to see that as a principle. If there's no other comments, is there a councillor willing to make a motion? Councillor Demoda.
Well, I just maybe just getting a little more clarification from the mayor's perspective, and if we were talking about the $500 and this, before we move forward, would that be a discussion to have considering moving up the overall pay by $500 per year or $1,000 a year? I guess, through you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, to his worship.
I don't have a firm position on it, but thank you, Councillor Demota. I'm just suggesting that it works out the same. So it would be $1,000 a year, $500 for each 2 months under the current system. If you went to a system where deputy mayor served for 6 months at a time, for example, or no, I guess it would be 8 and then just one time during the term, it would still work out. It doesn't make a difference particularly to me. It was just an option, and that $1,000 divided by 12 months would change the salary, but it works out at the end the same financial burden. So it doesn't really make much difference to me.
See it, okay.
Deputy Mayor Waxer, on this issue, if council was interested in deleting the third bullet under 2.1 base salaries, which references the deputy mayor $500 per month for the duration, in favor of increasing the base salary for councillors, it would be an increase of $83.33 per month for a new total of $2,463.33. So if council wanted to incorporate that as just sort of an addition into the annual salary, the monthly salary, taking that $500 per month for 2 months, dividing it across 12 months, that's what your new number would be.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Our current salary is $1,700 a month? No. 16, I can't remember.
Mayor Waxer, I don't have that information at hand. The unfortunate sort of structure of the admin procedures shows only the old numbers from 2017. There have been annual CPI increases over the course, since then. So that might be the case. Administration could find that out, but I don't have that information at hand.
Thoughts or comments, motions? Director Needham.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I would just, in terms of a motion and for clarity for administration, I would just like to ensure that we do get the amendments noted by bullet, so we know exactly what to bring back, particularly if you're considering directing us to come back to the next regular meeting. So just something for you to consider as you proceed here.
Councillor Kelleher MP.
So it looks like it's over a $9,000 increase to, for the base level of the year. I think, to me that, as Councillor Hall said, like, it's a pretty good base for somebody. I don't think we need to add on the 500. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, that is a hefty increase, for a councillor, because if we base it at, you know what I mean, at 1,600, I think that's somewhere where we are now, that's, $780 a month increase. So I'm happy with just the new base rate and then the routines.
Councillor Demoda.
You know, it's mixed in the community and who you speak to. Some people say that we get paid just enough. There'll be a few that say we make too much money, and then there's some that say that we don't make enough. And, you know, just as coming out of COVID, I believe the recommendation from past council was to keep the base pay the same, aside from CPI. From my experience recently and seeing that what the next council has to really work on, I think that this may not be like the greatest compensation for the roles, because for a while, and it still continues from time to time, that it's becoming more of a part-time job. It's been more of a full-time. So you know, Councillor Hall made reference to some of us, you know, having flexible jobs and some of us being retired, but you know, to attract people that do have jobs or other responsibilities, I think for the people running, not to scare anybody away, but better be prepared for a little bit more time than 20 hours a week, I would say, which is kind of like what we used to go on. So I just, I think that, you know, any type of little bump like that is reasonable, and I think that responsibilities are a little bit higher, and there's going to be a lot more work, and there is stress with that. I mean, it's there are sleepless nights, I'm not going to lie, right? And everybody's on a different level, and I think that setting up the next council for success is good. As far as compensation goes, and for people that running, it shouldn't be about the compensation, but it should be worthwhile too, because you know, it doesn't come with just that physical obligation that you have as a councillor. There's a lot more that goes on, and you know, and for that council to approve whatever for the next council coming up, if the pay is good or too much, then you know that can be established for the future councillors coming forward, councils coming forward. But at this time, I think that any type of little improvement that we can provide as an incentive, and I'm not trying to be self-serving on this. It's just I think about the community and you know what the best thing to do, and I think to really entice people to, you know, to run and get some qualified candidates, that it'd be worthwhile. And I think that even that $500 makes a lot of sense. Or sorry, the $1,000. Thank you.
I just make the comment again, sort of reiterating, it's not only entice, but make possible for some individuals to have the opportunity to run for office. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? We can debate after the fact. Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I will make a motion. I appreciate how challenging it is to make the motion, given the public perception. And I would just comment before I make the motion with respect to Councillor Demoda's comment that he didn't wish to appear to be self-serving. And I just reiterate that this is not at all self-serving. We are, if we approve, well, whatever we approve for council remuneration applies to a council that has not yet been selected by the community. It does not apply to us. And so I think we can all rest assured that we are not in any sense serving ourselves. We will not be subject to the new remuneration policy, but with the consent of the community, who will decide in October who serves. And it does open up the possibility that there will be more people who put their name forward to serve based on this. So with all of that, I will make a motion that committee recommend council approve policy B104 as amended, with those amendments to strike the third bullet point in section 2.1, base salaries, and to strike entirely the second sentence of Article 2.2, meeting honoraria. Again, with respect to those amendments, I am persuaded by the arguments of Councillor Kelleher MP that if the base salary is sufficient, there is not a need for extra compensation as deputy mayor, because we have reverted now again to the per diem approach. When there was not going to be a per diem approach, it would make some sense potentially to allow further compensation to those serving as deputy mayor, but that can be compensated now in another way. And then acknowledging the careful reading by Councillor Melnick with respect to Article 2.2, which is just a carryover of a non-existent regime where part of a councillor's honorarium could be treated as non-accountable expense, which is no longer the case, so that clause should come out. So subject to those two changes with the amended proposed policy, I will make the motion that council committee otherwise recommend to council approval of the amended policy B104.
Bring it up for debate, Councillor Demoda.
Yeah, not for debate, but just to clarify a little bit from where I was coming from with my comments. And, you know, the reason I said that is it was just very recent, probably within the last 7 days, maybe a little bit longer, where someone approached me in the street and asked me how things were going, and, you know, said, you know, I don't envy you in your positions right now as councillors, but at least you guys gave yourselves a little bit of a hike in salary. And I was like, I know, and so that's where I'm coming from, because a lot of people don't pay attention to the full aspects of what we're debating here, and then it just gets out in the community. You know, council gave themselves a raise, and so there are people out there. I know that was just one incident, but I've kind of fended that off when we initially went down this road. As far as the discussions go, and the necessary discussions that we need to have, but you know, so it's that concept is out there. So not much for debate, but more for clarification on where I was coming from. Thank you.
Any other thoughts to be shared or debate? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. We move then on to 7.5, the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation additional named insured.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. So administration is here with a request that committee recommend council approve the JMHC to be added as an additional named insured in the municipality Jasper's insurance policy. This might seem familiar to you because you in March of last year had a similar request from the Jasper Municipal Library. The request is for council approval to add the organization under the municipality's insurance policy through RMA. This designation would extend the municipality's liability and umbrella policies and their associated limits to the JMHC. The JMHC would be responsible for any costs associated with the insurance coverage. This is quite a common practice across municipalities, but council motion is required. And again, this is consistent with the approach that was taken with the library. A independent organization closely tied to the municipality serving municipal purposes. And so administration is bringing forward this recommendation, again, consistent with what's happened in the past. On just last week, the JMHC Board of Directors met and made a motion to formally request that the municipality provide this authorization.
Questions for CAO Given? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, through you to Mr. Gibbons. The additional insurance for the Housing Corporation talks about building, property and vehicles owned. Would that be owned or leased vehicles? And also in reference to vehicles, if we are we looking to hire a management company to manage the 40-room complex? Would we be insuring their vehicles?
Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Malik. So at this stage, the JMHC doesn't have any physical assets. So we just need to be clear that this is about ensuring that the organization has some level of insurance. As the municipality, we require any business operating in the municipality to demonstrate proof of insurance. So we need to make sure that we're compliant with that with our own corporation. So this is just a very basic step. Any other steps, over time as the organization added assets, would be independent steps where the JMHC would be responsible for any premiums that would arise from changes in their coverage from adding new assets. So, and I would say that's probably far away. We don't foresee the JMHC ever having leased vehicles. The JMHC will be considering at the, sort of towards the back half of the conclusion of the construction of the facility management, an early concept that was in the JMHC business plan referenced the Evergreens Foundation as a logical local provider of property management services. They, manage Pine Grove Seniors Manor. They manage affordable housing developments in a number of other communities as well. And so that's a conversation that we'd like to have. That hasn't been determined, but that's a conversation that would seem to make some sense. And I think it would be expected that any outside party would have their own insurance for their own stuff.
Thank you.
Other questions? Is anyone willing to make them? Oh, sorry, Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, through you to Mr. Given. And this is a question that is independent of my support for the motion. And if you don't have an answer, perhaps sometime later would be appropriate. But I just wonder whether adding the Municipal Housing Corporation as a named insured provides directors coverage for those people who serve as directors of the municipally controlled corporation.
Deputy Mayor Waxer for Mayor Ireland. I believe that this first step of the municipality adding the organization as an additional named insured is independent of the organization deciding what kind of coverage it needs. So similar to Councillor Melnick's question about physical assets and insurance on vehicles and such, that isn't presumed here. This is basically saying the municipality allows this organization to be under our umbrella policy, and any other additional insurance that they may need would be a direct relationship between the organization and the insurance provider, in this case, RMA. So basically, the approval here is not specific to what type of coverage. Does the municipality allow this organization to be under your umbrella? And then the conversation about the organization's insurance needs would be between the JMHC and RMA as the insurance provider.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kevin. I appreciate that. And so, as I indicated, it's inconsequential to my position with respect to the recommendation, but it is something that the Municipal Housing Corporation directors might want to take a look at. We have asked members of the community to step up to be directors of that corporation on behalf of the community, and I think they should consider whether or not some directors' coverage might be appropriate. In any event, Deputy Mayor Waxer, if there are not other hands looking to ask questions, I am prepared.
Sorry, I believe that we do have Councillor Demoda in line for a question, okay?
No, it wasn't a question. I was gonna move that forward, but Mayor, that's fine. I'm not here to
Okay,
steal anybody's thunder. You can take all the motions today.
Oh, it won't be all of them, but I will then make a motion that committee recommend council approve the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation request to be an additional named insured under the Municipality of Jasper insurance policy.
and is there any debate? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. We move now then to 7.6, attendance at the Economic Developers Conference in April. Councillor Melnick, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, and what I would like to propose for council for the next meeting is to confirm support for my attendance at the Economic Developers Alberta Leadership Summit and Conference in April of 2025, April 9th and 10th. This was a request through Community Futures West Yellowhead to attend this particular conference, and currently I sit as treasurer on that board. They have at this point paid the registration fee, and I think it's appropriate that any travel costs, hotels, and other out-of-pocket expenses be reimbursed by the municipality of Jasper. So first, I'm seeking approval to attend the conference on behalf of the municipality of Jasper and representing Community Futures West Yellowhead at that time. So I would put that forward for discussion to be voted on, I guess, at the next regular meeting.
Councillor Keller-Hurley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I attended when I sat on the community future boards, I attended that conference 3 times and I never needed permission to go because it was part of my regular duties as the chair of Community Futures. And at that time it was explained to me that that was part of my duties as that board member. And I went and my expenses were covered by the municipality.
Other thoughts? We probably need a motion to move that forward or yeah. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rochard. I would like to recommend that committee recommend to council to approve Councillor Melnick's attendance at the Economic Developers Alberta Leadership Summit in April of 2025 and to reimburse expenses not covered by Community Futures West Yellowhead.
Any debate? Councillor Demoda.
I just wanted to say that I'm very grateful to serve with Ralph on that board, and we couldn't get better representation from our community. Well, I guess we could, we don't know, but I'm just very grateful that you're there and very astute, and Ralph's commitment to the committee is it's immeasurable. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Demoda. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Motion carried. I believe now we move to the motion action list.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Waxer. So a couple of updates. First, I guess we'll go from the top of the list down. Administration is recommending the moving traffic enforcement item be deferred to April. So just given workloads, administration believes that this project is still going to be important and actually probably of increasing importance given the amount of activity that we're going to see in the community over the next couple of years from rebuilding efforts. But just in terms of our capacity to deliver it for this month, that was a bit strained. So we're recommending that April would give us some time to attack that one. The council remuneration review item has been delivered here today, so that item could be removed. The strategic priorities wildfire recovery, the first item from January 14th, can be removed. That had been returned back to council. And you'll see at the bottom of the list, there is the newer item that came from February 11th, where council told us to take those to the recovery advisory committee. So those will come back in due course. But the earlier one from January 14th be removed. And then the in-town contractor camps, interim residences and laydown requests, administration is recommending to defer to April. We are continuing to work, as you saw today, even with the discussion of the S block and the RV storage slots discussion. We're continuing to work on this broad issue. There'll be a number of items coming forward. Administration is recommending that this particular portion can be deferred to April as we work on those legislative changes that would be required for laydown and contractor work in other areas of the municipality.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I have a couple questions. My first is around the skate park committee. Do they still need 150,000? I've seen updates on their Facebook pages that they may be getting money from Red Cross. I'm just curious where they actually are with how much they need. Or you might not know that, but I'm just wondering if we could potentially find that out.
Deputy Mayor Waxer, I don't have that information at hand. Councillor Hall, we certainly can find, look for an update from them. The intention of the motion from March of last year was that council would provide a loan. And so they may be actually, it would have been wise to continue their fundraising so that they didn't have to take as much of a loan as predicted. But we can have a conversation with them. The other sort of nuance to that is that the intention was to sort of see how the project ended up in the total cost at the end. So I think, again, in March of last year, we were expecting the project to be complete in the fall. And then at that time, we'd sort of do the final accounting and come back to council with some information about how much of that 150 that might have needed to use. I think that this, the May placeholder here is subject to whatever sort of the completion of the project looks like, and then we would come forward with updates about the financial situation. I have no doubt the skate park committee has continued to work to try to bring in funds so that they can reduce the need for their use of this loan.
My second question is around the in-town contractor camps, and this may be where maybe I was confused, but when that came to us a few weeks ago, I assumed it was potentially allowing contractors to live in their RVs on the streets in front of some of the places that they were building in the fully destroyed areas. Kind of hearing conflicting report. I'm just not sure. Am I right in that assumption?
Deputy Mayor Wax for Councillor Hall. So that's a part of it. Administration is looking at all options to facilitate reconstruction and rebuilding efforts. One of the options that we get various inquiries about is, well, could we set up contractor camps in town adjacent to a construction site? We're looking at how we can facilitate that, or if we can facilitate that. It could include something like in our RVs. It also could include something more like a traditional contractor camp set up on a public roadway that is closed. So there are some areas where it might make sense to close a roadway that doesn't impact general traffic flow around the community for a specific project for a determined amount of time. So I don't imagine a situation where administration would be recommending to council allowing reconstruction workforce to just generally live in RVs anywhere around the community. This would be very much more site specific under very specific conditions with specific controls. So you're not wrong like that. I think that question can certainly come up because we are looking at all available options to try to increase housing supply in the town site, particularly during the busy summer season where we're going to see rebuild construction workforce competing for hotel rooms with visitors. And obviously we understand the importance of the visitor spend in our local economy. And so we're trying to find other options that can provide some space for accommodations for that rebuild workforce.
Councillor Keller-Hamby.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer, to you too, CA Given. It's not on here, but I know that we have applied to our province regarding our taxes for 2025. So when we send out our notices, will we have that information back so that if we're not approved to receive the grant to forgive taxes for 2025 for our budget, will we have to have a review of our budget before we do the tax bit for our budget coming up for 2025? Because we got it for 2024, but we're still waiting for 2025.
Deputy Mayor Waxer for Councillor Keller-Hamby. So the first information that's going to go out to residents and leaseholders will be their assessment notice. In the assessment notice, we have a pretty detailed question and answer insert that is going to go out, I believe, this week. I think towards the end of this week, those assessment notices are going to go out. That's going to be the first information people are going to have about what's going to happen with the 2024 financial stabilization that was received from the province. So in there, we'll be able to, highlight how that 2024 compensation is going to be provided. With respect to 2025, the province has indicated that the announcements around that would be subject to the completion of the provincial budget. I understand that is perhaps February 28th. We'll see if February 28th is this week. So we expect to hear very, very shortly. The implications of whatever is announced are things that we would deal with before we set the mill rate, right? So difference between assessment notices, which are going out now and earlier, so people know how much the value of their property is, and then the taxation rate, which comes later. And so administration fully expects that we'll have information about provincial financial supports and financial stabilization prior to having to come to council with recommendation to set the mill rate. If there was any shortfall or need to adjust the budget, that would be the time where we'd be bringing that discussion to council.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? And if not, is there Councillor willing? Councillor Hall.
I would make the recommendation that committee approve the motion action list as updated.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous. Moving now to upcoming meetings. Has anyone got anything they would like to speak about? Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Not a meeting, but I'm taking part in the Pathfinders program. I had my first session last week on Wednesday. It's 5 weeks of training, and I have another session this coming Wednesday around mental health first aid. It was very valuable last week, and I'm really excited to be part of this program.
Mr. Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. I think a number of us attended the opening of the activity center, the grand opening after the renovations. And it was great to see our MP and MLA there, as well as other individuals who spoke. And people were able to do a bit of a tour and see what was done. And I think it's great that we have this facility now fully accessible with the elevator. I think it'll give us a lot more flexibility in programming down the road here. In addition to that, I'm currently involved in a elected officials education course, so I'm halfway through the course right now. I have another couple of sessions to go. Let me see, what else do we have here? Later this week, we'll have a Community Futures West Yellowhead board meeting on Thursday.
Same thing with Ralph, or sorry, with Councillor Melnick, this Thursday via Zoom, where it's a Zoom meeting.
Councillor, I would say that I attended last night at the Yellowhead Museum, the Global Day of Action with the Ukraine. It's the Ukraine Commemorative Day. It was a beautiful event attended by about 75 people. There was many Ukrainian treats that were offered by the people who attended. A great deal of gratitude from the Ukrainian people to the community of Jasper and to Canada for hosting them in this time. And there was also a presentation by young man who grew up in Jasper, Taggart Wilson, who has worked as a volunteer in the Ukraine a number of times. And he had some very thought-provoking comments to make around Canadians' need for gratitude to the Ukrainians for their stance on defending democracy. And so I thought that was a very interesting perspective that which I saw was echoed today by Prime Minister Trudeau. Last week, I also attended the University of Alberta's Rocky Mountain Business Seminar, and one of their projects was coming up with ideas for the recovery of Jasper, and they've promised that they would share those eventually. And I also attended and spoke as Deputy Mayor at the opening of the Fitness and Aquatic Center. And afterwards, I wished I had remembered that at when we made the motion to move forward on that project, I had mentioned that we had to remember the bravery of the people who made the decision to move forward on building the activity center and fitness aquatic center at the time, and that I hope that in fact those people would be or would have been proud to see the advancements that we've made now. Councillor Kelleher MP.
I totally forgot. Yesterday, I had the pleasure last night of attending Immersive Marketplace reception. Jasper yesterday hosted 50 buyers from around the world, Korea, Canada, US, UK, here in Jasper. There was, it's called speed dating meetings with our sellers here in Jasper, and Grand Prairie, Hinton, everybody north, Edmonton, everybody was north here. For this, they had one last week in the south, and today all these buyers are out on tours, seeing Jasper and what we have to offer. And so they were saying that our trade for this summer is looking good, and it was just great to see everybody here in Jasper.
Councillor Demoda.
I'm gonna ask, what was the former name of that conference?
Used to be Canada West Marketplace, and that used to have the BC and Alberta sellers together. BC decided not to participate in it after COVID. So Alberta Tourism felt that it was important to keep it going. So what they did was they did it over 2 weekends where they had the south of Alberta and cities together and then the north. And then the buyers are here for 10 days and they get to see all of Alberta and what we have to offer.
That's great, and it's more of an infomercial type question, because I knew the answer to that, but just for people that are viewing and seeing that, I'm grateful that they're coming to Jasper and helping support the community, that there is a little bit of a trickle in the economy, to, you know, boost us along. I just, to me, for others, it's other tourism operators and suppliers coming here to, take a look at our product and you know, see what the opportunities are to bring people here to the community. And I think that's great. I think the more exposure that we get on that level, the better it is for our community, especially at this time. Thank you.
Anything else to add for anyone? So we move then to upcoming events. Has anyone, Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. If I can add, this was announced this week, the Jasper Pride and Ski Festival dates are April 4th to the 13th.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Any other further additions? If not, is there a councillor willing to make the motion to adjourn?
I was
Mayor Ireland wanted to.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just.
All right, I will make that motion.
Thank you for that. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you all for a very productive meeting.
Productive.
Thank you all.